Star Wars has one unbreakable rule. Every master and apprentice story gets a final chapter, which means Luke Skywalker's return in the coming Mandalorian and Grogu movie has to happen. Grogu was his student, and that story doesn't have an ending yet. Every teacher and every student has had a closing chapter. Every single one. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, resolved. Obi-Wan and Luke, resolved. Luke and Vader, resolved. Luke and Rey, resolved. And then there is Luke and Grogu. That story doesn't have an ending yet, but I believe it's going to get one. When Grogu met the teacher who would prepare him to become a Jedi, it was also the most talked about Star Wars moment in years. Not just because we saw the green lightsaber again, but because Luke Skywalker showed up and did exactly what Luke Skywalker was always supposed to do. He walked into a room full of darkness, and he was the light. And then he looked at Grogu, and Grogu made his first choice. He left Din Djarin and went with Luke. He chose the Jedi path. For a while, Luke trained him, gave him a foundation in the Force, a glimpse of what being a Jedi could truly mean. And then came the second choice, the harder one. Luke offered Grogu something most Jedi never get, a choice. The lightsaber, or the Beskar armor Din had made for him. He chose love. He chose attachment. He chose the thing the Jedi Order spent 1,000 years teaching its students to resist.
Attachment leads to jealousy. The shadow of greed, that is.
What must I do, Master Yoda?
Train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose.
And Luke let him go. Not because he didn't care, but because Luke Skywalker, the one Jedi who proved that attachment doesn't have to lead to darkness, understood what that choice meant better than anyone. But here is what that moment actually created. It didn't resolve their story. It interrupted it. In 50 years of Star Wars storytelling, there is a pattern so consistent it has become a law. The master-apprentice relationship always reaches a closing chapter. Not sometimes, not usually, always. And it is never arbitrary. Every single resolution in this saga follows the same emotional logic. The master either sacrifices for the student, giving everything so the student can continue, or the student surpasses the teacher, becoming something the master could only point toward, or the two of them reach an understanding together that neither could have reached alone. Look at what that looks like across the saga. Obi-Wan doesn't just sacrifice himself for Luke. He continues teaching from beyond death. His presence guides Luke through his greatest moment.
Use the Force, Luke.
The relationship doesn't end. It transforms. Yoda's final words to Luke are not goodbye. They are a commission. He doesn't close the relationship. He extends it into everything Luke will do for the rest of his life. And then there is Vader, a man who spent 2 films as the villain of Luke's story, who tried to turn him to the dark side, who was everything Luke was fighting against. And in the end, Luke's refusal to give up on his father is what saves him. The student's belief transforms the master.
You already have, Luke. You were right. You were right about me. Tell your sister. You were right.
The relationship closes in the only way it could, through love that refused to stop. Even Luke's last act as a living Jedi is a master's act. He buys time for Rey. He demonstrates what it means to put others before yourself. He closes his own story by opening hers. Every relationship, every era, every generation the pattern never breaks. Which brings us back to the one relationship that doesn't have its closing chapter yet. The Mandalorian and Grogu arrives in theaters on May 22nd, the first Star Wars film in 7 years. And Jon Favreau has described what it's about in terms that should stop every Star Wars fan cold. Progression and growth, apprenticeship, one generation teaching the next. That is not a coincidence. That is the exact thematic language of an unresolved master-apprentice story reaching its next chapter. And consider where we are in the timeline. This film takes place during the exact period when Luke Skywalker is most active in the galaxy. He is searching for Jedi artifacts. He is gathering Force knowledge. He is building toward the academy he will eventually establish. And Grogu, according to what we know about the film, discovers a mysterious Force artifact that enhances his abilities. A discovery that connects directly to the kind of ancient Jedi knowledge Luke is spending this entire era of his life pursuing. Their stories are running in parallel. The timeline doesn't just allow for their reunion, it almost requires it. But there is something bigger than the timeline. Grogu is going into this film as something that has never existed in Star Wars before. Not a Jedi, not a Mandalorian, a Force-sensitive foundling who chose love over the Jedi code and was shaped by both traditions. That identity, that entirely new kind of being in the Star Wars universe, was forged in two places. In the months he spent training with Luke, and in the moment he chose to leave. Everything Grogu is right now, every Force push, every instinct, every choice between attachment and discipline carries Luke's fingerprints. Luke hasn't seen what his student became. He needs to. Lastly, there is one more reason I believe we will see Luke again. We talk about timeline logic. We talk about character arcs. We talk about what Lucasfilm has officially confirmed. But there is something else. Luke's return in The Mandalorian truly moved people. And for an audience that had spent years feeling like Star Wars had forgotten what it was, that mattered more than almost anything the franchise had done in a generation, Favreau and Filoni know what that moment was. They created it. They know what it meant to the people who watched it. And they understand what they are holding now. A film, a theater, an audience who has been waiting 7 years, a character who was trained by the most beloved Jedi in the history of this saga, and an unfinished story that the rules of Star Wars say cannot be left incomplete. That is not nothing. If this film delivers on the full emotional promise of everything The Mandalorian built, and every indication is that Favreau intends exactly that, then Grogu's story earns its fullest version only if Luke is there to see what his student became, even briefly, even for a moment. I want to be honest with you about what this video is. This is not a leak. There is no confirmed casting. Mark Hamill himself has said his time as Luke is finished. Lucasfilm is officially moving on from the Skywalker saga. They may mean every word of it. But here is what I know. In 50 years of Star Wars, through good films and great ones, through missteps and masterpieces, through George Lucas and Disney, and every creative team that has ever worked in this universe, there is one thing that has never changed. The master and the student always find their way back to each other. Grogu is out there right now, shaped by Luke's teaching, carrying Luke's unfinished work inside every Force-sensitive cell in his 50-year-old body, heading into a story that is explicitly, by the director's own words, about one generation teaching the next. And somewhere in a galaxy far, far away, Luke Skywalker has unfinished business. If you think we will see Luke again, Or if you think I'm completely wrong, tell me in the comments. Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with you, always.